Hey, and welcome to this first episode of Sponsorship Heroes. I'm here today with Will Curran from, introduce yourself. That's easier.
Yeah, from Endless Events. So we're an event production and virtual event production company, essentially, that has been in business for over 13 years, producing primarily events in the States, but from coast to coast, nationwide. And, it's been a fun time. And our whole goal is that we take all the complicated event technology and AV and all that stuff that we don't want to worry about, and we make it super duper easy.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear from you now. Because in these times with Corona all around, where people are freaking out, I mean, I see so many events which are canceled for the moment. So it's obvious that we have to shift kind of to the virtual world with a lot of events. But I believe that this is something which is going to last also. I mean, you didn't start now probably just because of Corona to make virtual events, but it started way before, and it will be also after Corona, it will be there. And I see personally, I see even a chance now that Corona is going to help also to promote the idea of virtual events and what this can mean also for event organizers. But let's dive maybe in really to the details. What is actually a virtual event and how can you imagine a virtual event? Because I believe that many event organizers, they have a big question mark in front of them because they don't know what can I do with a virtual event.
Totally, totally. Well, yeah, I mean, you bring up such a good point that, this is here now to stay. I mean, hybrid events and virtual events have existed before all of this happened. Sure, we didn't focus too much on virtual events because everyone said the in-person experience was where it at. But we also started focusing on like hybrid events. How can we extend our reach and bring people in from all over? Well, now that's the only option. So everyone's scrambling to figure this out. And I must say for planners out there, if you don't understand virtual events, you are not alone. But there are people that understand it, and that's what we're here for. So we'll definitely dive into it. So what is a virtual event and what's possible? Well, virtual event is honestly, think of it exactly like a normal event. Think about it as, hey, it's a gathering of people who might need to share information, might need to connect with each other. They might need to collaborate, maybe they are there to be entertained and enjoy. It's as simple as watching a concert on a live stream to something as complex as a full conference full of education and networking opportunities. The best way I describe to when I'm talking to my clients right now who are looking to convert from in-person to virtual is what's possible is really anything is possible. You got to think about it. It's the internet. It's the technology. Anything is possible. When it came to an event, if you wanted to build a 50-foot tall, crazy truss structure with lights and all that sort of stuff like that, it would be cost a lot of money because there's a lot of work and the rental expense. Technically on the internet, you could draw it and it'd be done in 5 seconds and everyone could enjoy it. The same kind of concept that you're thinking about when you're in-person events can be done virtually. So the more you can brainstorm to think, here's what I've done in the past and here's what my event looked like, and then saying, how can I now recreate that virtually is a great way to mentality. And the way I've been telling a lot of clients, honestly, is dream big. If you've attended some sort of virtual community before, think about what you enjoyed and say, I want that sort of thing. And I think that's a really, really great way to start. And I'm sure we'll dive into it a lot too, is how people can then start to convert their virtual event. But really, when it comes to virtual events, dream big and anything is possible, guys. It's the internet, it's technology. You can do it. It's more about, how can we integrate it? How can we make sure that it's effective? And how can we make sure that the attendees still have an engaging experience throughout the entire process?
Indeed, I mean, we're luckily, I would say, in these moments we have indeed the technology which is ready. I mean, everybody almost has today bandwidth, which is really large enough to live stream videos. So that should not be the problem anymore. And even, I mean, we're on the edge of 5G networks where you can really do it completely mobile. Even with 4G, I believe you could also do it partly at least, but with 5G, it will not be a problem anymore. But the question that I was asking myself also, doing a virtual event for a conference or for a talk show or for something where people are speaking, that's pretty easy actually, but is it limited really to these kind of events, or can you imagine it also for sports events or cultural events? What do you think about this?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're coming down to creating your event, any event technically can be turned virtual. Should every event be turned virtual is probably a better question. But what I like to ask people is to start your strategy for your events with why. Right at, Simon Sinek's been saying for years, start with why, the golden circle, why, then how, then what, but you have to do that now. And I think that far too many people are approaching their virtual events with how and what rather than the why. So, for example, yeah, a sporting event totally can be live streamed. I mean, we've been doing it for years. If you think about the Grammys, we watch it on the television. We've been watching the Olympics online for years and years and years. We watch debates and presentations online as well. Like, look at TED Talks, for example. They've been doing all their presentations. You can watch them asynchronously whenever you like online. So anything's really, really possible. But whenever you're coming to an element where you feel like, I don't know how we can execute, instead ask yourself, why are we doing that? And I'm sure when we talk about sponsorship and exhibits, that's the number one question I'm getting is, how can we do an exhibit hall virtually? And instead I say, why are you doing an exhibit hall? Then approach it with the how and the what. So, I think there's some events where it's also causing people to really think that kind of should question is, for example, I had a client came to me and said, I have a client coming up. They have a wedding, and we want to live stream the wedding and all this and that, and we want to make the wedding virtual. And I said, okay, well, why do we go to weddings, right? There's the first part, which is the celebrating the union between two people, right? And you kind of get, yay, cool, they're married, yeah. But the real reason people go to the wedding is the party afterwards, that they can get everybody together, they can drink, they can eat, and they get to celebrate now the marriage, right? Well, the question becomes, can you turn that virtually? Well, then that's when you start to have that conversation. Is it even worth doing it virtually if that's not the point? Maybe you live stream just the ceremony and that's it, and boom, we're done, and that's it, right? Rather than thinking like, hey, let's try to recreate that social aspect and things like that. Maybe it's setting up a video chat where everyone gets to talk to, and grandma gets to catch up with, the bride, and everything like that. Maybe things like that I think can really come into it. But definitely whenever people are asking, start with why and then go into how, and then I think that you'll start to get in a better place with these conversations rather than a lot of people just going tech first, I want this platform, and then they're trying to figure out why they're doing it after that point.
Totally agree with you on this point also. For me, you mentioned also before hybrid events. So that's something which is also very important, because the kind of, also if you go to conferences, or as you mentioned now, the weddings, where the party really is a reason why people go there. I feel that a lot of events will benefit also by this hybrid model, where they can extend actually the normal scope by going virtual also, because I've been filming, for example, as a video producer, so many conferences which were big, where people were flying in from all over the place, but there were 250, 500, 600 people there. But probably there could have been 1,000, 2,000 people if only actually they could have gone there. So if you transform these events into hybrid events, then you can also reach a much, much larger target, which is also, by the way, of course, much more interesting than for sponsors, because sponsors also probably are for the moment in a situation where they don't know exactly how can I actually get into a virtual event, what is the benefit of a virtual event, and how can I handle it. And here we're speaking about activations. So how can event organizers who are going virtual now, how can they propose adequate activations for a sponsor? Any thoughts about this?
Yeah, I have so many ideas right now, and that's where I think that brainstorm mentality has been really helpful for a lot of my conversations I've been having. Is that honestly, some of my clients are coming up with really great ideas. They think they don't know how to do it, but then I say, why are you doing an exhibit hall? Tell me about what the value is for your exhibitors and for your sponsors and things like that. And then they start saying, well, this is what I'm trying. The sponsor really wants to connect with new potential business. I say, okay, so how can we recreate that new connection of business and go from there? So when it comes to, for example, let's talk about the kind of one of the most traditional ways revenue generations for sponsors, which is for a conference is like an exhibit hall, right? Or maybe it's like, for example, at a festival, you have booths set up where sponsors can throw out like demo swag, hand out their product of that new sugary beverage they got. What I like to do is I've been talking to a lot of clients and saying, okay, why do we have these exhibitors there? So what I've kind of come down to the conclusion of, there's a couple different reasons why. There's the first reason, which is I'm looking for new business, right? They want the 2,000 people coming to the event to walk by their booth and go, huh, I've never heard of, Shure, the headphone company. I just look at like random brands, or Sony, the camera company. That looks really interesting. That camera looks really cool. Let me walk into their booth and boom, now I'm aware and I build some awareness of what's possible. So awareness generation. Then there's kind of the next level, which is actually selling products, right? The exhibitor is actually looking to make deals and sell things on site, right? They want to sell a product. They might want to close a contract. They might want to get someone, that sort of thing, right? Like close the actual business. Then you have the kind of the little bit later stage, which is they maybe have existing customers already there and they're trying to keep them retained, to keep relationships, maybe to renew contracts or to show off a new product that they want everyone to be aware of, so they spend more money and upsell, right? So that might be an option. I'm sure we can go down this all day long. So now here's how you can convert it into the virtual side. So if awareness is your game, here's a great idea. If you're just trying to get eyeballs to be aware, why don't you consider, what we've been doing for years on television, which is ads. Run a pre-roll ad. The general session is about to start. President Obama is about to be on stage, and let's run an ad for that product and sell that ad space because you have a captive audience ready to watch and seeing that ad. Maybe it's product placement. Right before, the main keynote speaker goes on, bring up somebody who can demo and show off Rosie the Riveter, the new robot, or something like that, right? Oh, so many different ideas. And that generates that awareness that they're looking for. Here's what's even better, though. Before, if you want to generate awareness, they might just walk by and they might see it and be like, oh, cool, brand, walk away. You kind of want them to walk in and maybe you can capture their information and things like that. What if instead you can make it so that ad pops up and then you make a button that says, if you're interested, click this button. You already have all the attendees' information. Boom, it connects the attendee and the exhibitor together right away. Totally possible with this technology. Now, let's move on to the next thing. How can we sell more business and close deals and have these sales conversations that we want to have, right? Well, maybe not the goal is just trying to get the salesperson in front of every single attendee, but maybe instead we try to build, and this is kind of two-part, is build a system that allows exhibitors to get in, build profiles, say what they are able to help with, and then maybe we build a system that allows people to create topics that people want to join and understand. No one wants to go into a booth and say, you know what, I want to only talk about Sony's new, A7S III, which one day will come out, right? And that's the one thing we want to talk about. And, and everything like that. No, they don't want to talk about. They want to talk about how can we capture high-speed footage at 4K resolution. And I know that doesn't make any sense to anybody, but you're getting kind of the idea. People don't want to be sold. They want to buy. But what your exhibitors instead should be doing is coming in as thought experts and leading in great conversations. So there's tools out there that exist that allow you to set up a profile for an attendee. They put in their bio and all those things like that. They select their interests, and then they propose topics, and then other people say, yeah, I want to talk about that. And then Auto does the scheduling and everything like that. Here's the best part. Not only have you just created a great system for sponsors to communicate and to engage with attendees, you've also allowed the attendees to talk to each other, which is solving another problem, which is how can we recreate the networking experience online, right? So now you're getting like bang for your buck. Look, I'm helping fulfill sponsorship, and I'm also allowing my attendees to talk to each other. Win-win, right? Then let's look at the kind of the last option, which is retention. That's where maybe, for example, an exhibitor has the ability to look through and see what company names are there and what people are there, and not necessarily contact them and barrage them with spam, because spam is not okay. But let's say, for example, an exhibitor has the ability to identify who their customers are that are at that event. I, as an exhibitor, would love to see my clients again in person or virtually. I want to communicate and connect with them. So wouldn't it be great if, again, I could look through, an attendee list and then let those attendees know that their existing vendors already exist here. Let's say, for example, you could do a pairing system where exhibitors upload their list of who their customers are, attendees have their attendee list, it cross matches the two and says, oh, hey, by the way, just so you know, all the companies you're already using are already here. If you want to, you can set up that one-on-one conversation as well if you'd like to. And I know a ton of attendees would be like, oh my gosh, I need to talk to, Sony anyways because I need to buy 1,000 cameras tomorrow. This is great. I can just knock it out right now versus sending them an email, setting up a separate meeting, that sort of thing. And then boom, you're driving value for your exhibitors. So these are all just ideas that are totally possible with technology. But when you go back again to that why, it allows you to then extrapolate how can we then build the tools to do that rather than just here's a tool and let's kind of try to cram ourselves into it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, for me, one of the topics that I always follow and that I propagate also when I work with sponsors and event organizers is kind of what I call inbound sponsorship, where I say there needs to be kind of interactivity, engagement, not only just putting the logo, but really also giving the possibility to promote information. And that's exactly also what you say, what can be done. What I really like also is the idea that you can work with profiles of attendees so that you can right away publish them or direct them to the right information and having the possibility of an interaction. So that's something which is, in my opinion, even stronger possible in the interactive or virtual world rather than having it in a live event. So that makes a big difference.
Definitely. And it's funny too that you say that too, because this profile thing, it's nothing new, right? We all have Facebook profiles. We have LinkedIn profiles. This idea of profiles and people filling them out is not new. What I found though is with virtual events and in-person events especially, people feel the lack to need to fill out that profile because they're like, look, I got my badge, I'm fine. I don't want anyone to know anything about me. But virtual events, that profile is so important and rich to be able to allow people to connect with each other and to see the richness. And maybe it's something where, it's name, photo, company, and maybe link to my LinkedIn profile so you don't have to re-input all that information. But more you can make that profile rich and give people the opportunity to learn about each other, the better you're going to have these really, really tight connections.
And like this, you can create this win-win-win situation: win for the organizer, win for the sponsor, and win for the attendee at the end. So that's something which is extremely important. Another aspect which I find also perfectly interesting is the whole tracking of the success of the sponsorship. Because if you're in the real world, I know that most of the event sponsors, they have a hard time tracking really the success of the sponsorship unless you really kind of follow it through the internet. But if you have a virtual event, you can write from A to Z, from the first contact, really, you can perfectly track what happened with the sponsorship and where return of investment was going. So that's something which is also an enormous plus also here.
I think you brought up that good point of the inbound marketing thing. I think like inbound marketing is such a big part of this process too, because like you said, it's so easy to track. Because the great thing is, as an event organizer, these tools, these platforms that I'm connecting my clients with, they have the ability to track exactly what pages they're going to, what links they're clicking. But imagine, for example, there's a button that we give a sponsors opportunity to have where they have a profile, this and this, that, and we can put it like a request for quote button. Well, what I would encourage a sponsor to do is to utilize existing technologies. This is going to get a little nerdy for a second, but websites have the ability to track using what's called UTM parameters, which like your Google Analytics or your HubSpot can say, when I click on this link and go to your site, where did they come from? That's so valuable for me because as a sponsor, I can make it so that URL is rich with information. So when they click on it, I know they came from that virtual event. And then therefore, with tools like HubSpot, you can literally track down to the action where they came from. If I knew as a sponsor that someone clicked on a link at a virtual event, I'm going to double down my sponsorship next year and know where that's at. And I think it's planners' responsibilities now to like work with a technological partner who can think this way and think about the technology to be able to help sell these sponsorships and track it. And everything's trackable. It used to be, for in-person events, you need beacons and RFIDs to track where everyone was going, what they were doing, what interaction they were doing. Now you can do that all on the internet using very, very simple technologies that already exist.
Now, the interesting question for me, as we're working with a lot of bigger event organizers, but also for sponsorship with a lot of smaller event organizers, and the majority of the events who are looking for sponsors, they're actually the smaller events. So from what size, actually, in your opinion, can an event be virtualized? Does it have to be a certain bigger event, or can it be really also smaller events?
Yeah, I mean, any size. There's a certain point where you need different tools for different sizes of groups. But, let's say, for example, you had an event as small as 4 people. Like, for example, let's talk about my quarterly planning I'm doing with my leadership team with 5 people. Originally, they were all going to come to Phoenix. We got hotels. We were set up a meeting room. We were going to do all that. That's an event, right? And originally, we were like, well, we were going to do this. We were going to spend time together. And it was important. Obviously, we work virtually and our company's 100% remote. So it's important for us to see each other in person. But now, instead, we obviously have all this like restrictions and things are what's possible. We're literally just going to do it on Zoom, right? We hopped on Zoom meeting, we create one Zoom link, and we're going to have all of our faces simultaneously, and we'll all sit from the comfort of home. That's really, really simple. I think that's where a lot of people are leaning towards because it feels comfortable with like video conferencing and what we're used to, right? And then you can start to scale up, right? Let's say I wanted to do a virtual event for my company of 30 people or so, right? Okay, well maybe Zoom is just a little bit too clunky, right? Like if someone decides to unmute themselves, it could interrupt, things like that. Let's say, for example, I want the ability for there to be some long-term communication, not just the chat. Okay, so we got to figure out what sort of tools we can implement to go beyond that. Then obviously I think where everyone's kind of freaking out right now and has no idea what to do is what happens when I have 100 people, 200 people, 1,000, 5,000 people. Well, there's just certain tools that help you solve those problems in different layers as well. So, for example, if you wanted to do a general session where someone's giving a big keynote and all 5,000 people are together, and then let's say you want to do breakout rooms where there's 500 people in each, and we need 10 of them. Okay, let's use a technology that then creates these virtual breakout rooms. Okay, I want to be able to, while that's all happening, some people don't even want to go to the breakout rooms at all. They want to network and have individual one-on-one conversations. Okay, then I have a tool for that. And it's very similar almost to the regular event planning. The difference is instead of saying, hey, venue, give me these rooms, instead it's, hey, let me talk to my virtual event production company and give me the tools and the technologies to plug people in from there. So yeah, totally possible with any size. And, it just depends on the complexity, again, your why and what are your goals. And for a lot of people, the thing I've been kind of warning as well is that this is also going to change your content. This is not, before I was talking to one client, they're like, we had 900 hours of content. I was like, cool. No one's going to want to watch 900 hours of content. So why don't you go through and pick the most important stuff and start axing the things that people aren't like. They say, oh, well, what happens if I have a presenter who's really boring and not going to be good on camera and they're not going to sound good? And honestly, if I was at home watching them on a webinar, I'd fall asleep. I'd say, maybe it's the decision to say no to that piece of content then, right? And I think that it's creating this awesome renaissance within the events industry for people to start thinking larger and more strategically about what they're doing, because now they're thinking not just, oh man, they're going to fall asleep inside a ballroom. It's they're going to fall asleep and go and watch Netflix at home. There's so much more to compete with now that everybody's at home. So yeah.
When it comes to now creating these hybrid models, actually, what kind of strategies would you propose if someone says, okay, I don't want to ditch my normal real event, but I want to create this hybrid model? So what would be kind of the first steps, or kind of like a blueprint for kind of virtualizing a real event while keeping it also hybrid?
Yeah, so a lot of the strategies I'm talking about with virtual events apply directly to this. The difference is that those conversations about the technologies for it and things like that only apply to your virtual hybrid audience, right? The virtual side of things. The part that then you have to start to think about when you implement a hybrid portion is how can you connect the real world with the virtual world, right? And blend them two together, because far too often I think people think about this is that there's the virtual audience and then there's the in-person audience, and guess which one gets ignored the fastest? The virtual audience, right? We're going to have a presenter come on stage in person. There's 1,000 people in the room. We have 1,000 people tuning in. The presenter's only going to address and make the people laugh and, call out the people in the audience in person, right? You got to figure out a way to engage the virtual audience simultaneously so they are equals. Because otherwise what's going to happen is the virtual audience will say, I'm just a fly on the wall, and I'll watch the recording later. I'm gonna go play Xbox. So I think as much as you can try to blur the lines between the two, the better. I'll give you a great simple example of this. If you're doing a presentation and you're using a software that allows people to text in Q&A, allow that same system to be shared between the virtual and the in-person audience. So for example, someone in the room can text message an answer into it and throw it on screen. The virtual audience can do the same, and they both get equal importance on what's coming in. What would be even better is, why don't you figure out a way to tag it, so then that way when the presenter sees that question come in from the virtual audience, they can say, hey, Joel, I see you're watching at home in, Luxembourg. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it's late at night, and they feel so engaged because they're like, wow, he's talking right to me, and I feel like I'm valued. I feel like I got my 5 seconds of fame, all that sort of stuff. So the more that you can bring this hybrid audience to the same level as the in-person audience, it's going to make it so then that way each person has the enjoying part. Think about that too with your networking as well. How can in-person attendees maybe network with virtual attendees as well? And I think one of the best parts to think about all this is just a little cherry on top is if you're doing a hybrid event, you're recording everything, man, now you have so much digital content that you can use for your podcast, that you can use for your YouTube channel, for your blog. Like, And man, it's already all done. And look at that. Isn't that just fantastic? So I just get so excited about all this stuff.
Well, it really opens kind of a Pandora's box, and which is fantastic. And by the way, also, as you mentioned, really, you have this content which will stay for, I wouldn't say forever, but for a long time on the internet. That's
sure.
also which increases value, of course, also for a sponsor. So that means you, as an organizer, you might even ask for more because you can tell your sponsor, look, we're going virtual, so we're going to keep this, and so many more people can watch it. So your value as a sponsor is increasing clearly. And by the way, also what you said with the tools which allow you to connect the virtual audience with a real audience, I think spontaneously of tools like Glyssa, like Slido, for example, who especially for conferences, who provide fantastic possibilities just simply to make this happen. And I'm going to have, by the way, also another podcast also with Michael Piddock from Glyssa,
Awesome.
where we're going to
Michael.
talk really about this topic also, because I feel that these tools, which are super developed in the meanwhile, they are becoming extremely important now over the next months or next years, I would say, especially when it comes to these virtual events.
Absolutely. And I think if people can realize too, like, this is not like, I think a lot of people are thinking about this in the short term, like, oh, we'll just get through this. But guys, like, this is your chance to learn and grow as event professionals. And, let's say, for example, another pandemic happens 3 years from now. Imagine if you're preparing for this now and you're learning about this stuff and you're listening to this podcast, you're going to be far better off than the person who said, I'm just going to hold off and try to, hang in there while I can. So, I think that this is for sure going to change events forever, for sure.
It will. It's a little bit the same as also now with so many companies who discovered all of a sudden that they can do teleworking actually from home, where they were reluctant. They didn't want to do it before. And now all of a sudden they realize, oh, it works. And this will not go away anymore. Same as for virtual events. Will, I'm pretty sure that many of the people who are watching this now ask yourself, okay, how can I contact Will? He needs to help me with my event. So how can they get to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my company's called Endless Events. You just go to helloendless.com, HELLOENDLESS.com. We're pumping out a piece of content every day on virtual events. So you want to head over to the blog. We're also we have a virtual event checklist as well. So if you're wondering how to plan a virtual event, we're doing that. We're going to probably have Peter on our show Event Icons talking about virtual sponsorships soon. So we're pumping out content like absolutely crazy about this right now. So that's one of the best places to start. I'm also on every single social media network. So I will apologize because I'm absolutely getting flooded right now with talking about virtual events. But if you just shoot me a message, you say, I need help, I'm going to connect you with the right people. But if you are looking for somebody who can help navigate all the technologies, what to do, strategy around virtual events and things like that, just go to helloendless.com. There's some awesome buttons about contacting us, getting pricing, all that sort of stuff. Just reach out to us. Someone on my team will help. And if we can't help you, we're going to help you get connected with the right solution and hopefully get you on your way.
Perfect. Well, I cannot add anything anymore. So this was super interesting. Will, many thanks for your insights. And I must say, it's a good thing about this crisis that really it opens up new perspectives. And I just got, after this half an hour, I got super excited also about all the possibilities that we have with interactive and virtual events. It's fantastic. And now I'm really a little bit more optimistic that everything is going to be really good at the end of the day.
Awesome. I'm glad I can introduce some positivity and help out in any sort of way. And it's seriously such a pleasure to be on your show. And, obviously I'm a huge fan. So any chance that I can get to chat with you, I'm always happy.
Same for me. And now you're a sponsorship hero.
Woo! Yes. I'm going to put it on my application.
You can do it. Perfect. Well, thank you very much. And to everybody who's watching and who was watching, I hope that you're going to tune in for the next one. So it's only the first one of a whole series. We have some more guests coming up in the next weeks. And I have the feeling that this is not going to be a one-off, but it's going to be probably going to last for a couple of weeks or even months. There are so many people out there who have interesting ideas to that. Stay tuned. If you want, follow us. Just connect also with us at sponsormyevent.com. We are here to help also when it comes to sponsorship. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Will. And see you soon again. Bye-bye.